Talk about how the best students structure their days. Turns out there are great studies on this. There's a really nice paper, in fact, that surveyed close to 700 students. These were medical students, approximately equal number of male and female students, and analyzed the most useful learning habits. That is, the learning habits associated with the most successful students. Now, anytime you do a study like this where people take surveys, there's always the issue of causality. In fact, we can pretty much set aside any possible causality. For instance, I'm about to tell you that the very best performing students tend to study for about 3 or 4 hours per day. But you could easily say, well, they're the best students because they study 3 or 4 hours per day. They don't study 3 or 4 hours per day because they're the best students. And you'd be exactly right. Okay, we can get into all sorts of discussions about correlation versus causation, about reverse causality, and on and on. However, none of that is the point here. The point here is to establish what are the habits that the most successful students seem to incorporate over and over again, regardless of what classes they're taking, regardless of where they are in their arc of their learning trajectory. And so what we know based on this study, and I'll provide a link to it in the show note captions, is that there are at least 10 study habits that the highly effective students use. I'm going to focus on the top 5 or 6 just for sake of time, because it turns out that most of the effect, it appears, of being a better student can be attributed to these top 5 or 6 habits. First of all, they set aside time to study. They literally schedule time to study. Now, this probably serves several roles. The first one is that they are able to clear out other distractions. And in fact, that's the second thing that they do. They are very effective, or they make it a point of putting their phone away and off, of isolating themselves. That's right. They're not studying with other people. They study alone, which is not to say that people who study with others cannot be effective in their studying, but the best performing students seem to study alone. They put their phone away. They tell their friends and families that they are not going to be able to be reached during that time. And yes, they study for 3 or 4 hours per day, but they break that up into a couple of different sessions, typically 2 or 3 sessions. So they're not doing a 3 or 4 hour studying bout all in one shot.